A Conversation, Episode 2, Books, Publication, and the Role of Social Media.
Okay. Hello. So today's episode will be the second episode, and we're going to be looking at the importance of publication and critical writing. This is piggybacking off of the last episode where we just ended the first episode. We start talking about books and the importance of reading. So today we're going to look at publication, critical writing, the importance of books, and also look at social media a bit, and audiobooks, and just look at basically how we use them within the worlds of arts, I guess, architecture and art,
In architecture.
Yeah, so...
Yeah, definitely. So, I don't know how you want to start it off. We're going to try and keep these things to about 50 minutes at the moment for the first few episodes, so we figure exactly what we're doing, but again, just going to try and have a conversation around something that we talk about out of studio quite a lot.
Right.
Definitely amongst just our peers, but to each other we definitely speak about the role of publication and, like we said in the last episode, the growing importance of reading good books to us in accordance with our practice. So maybe just start by talking about books themselves for the first half of the podcast.
Yeah, first half we're probably going to talk about books. Basically how we go about reading, how we think, why we think they're important, I guess, and the role of a book, and a lot of ways within the art.
So I know to you the author is important.
Yeah, so we'll start by talking about this. So why is a book important? Well, to me, first of all, it's usually it's a piece of critical writing. But the first thing I do when I go to look for a book is I look at the author. So, and the reason for that is because you can look at an author, and I wouldn't just read a book by any guy. I wouldn't just look at a title and go, oh, that's interesting. I look at a title and I go, and then the first thing I do is always go and look at the author. I go, all right, this is written by someone I might like, a Robert Hughes, say, or a Joseph Albers. But what I'll do straight away is say I don't know who it is. I can Google and go, oh, who is this? What's their importance? What's their significance? Maybe how trained are they to even talk about these things? Like, how informed are they?
That's why it's important to you.
That's why it's important. Yeah,
it's the author's versus face value of something you don't know for you, and it's definitely the same for me. And to give the author a bit credit, I think we both agree that the reason a book's author is important is also the amount of time it takes to write a book.
Right.
It gives the author some backing in towards dedication, and maybe the topic they talk about, they've spent a lot of time doing it historically. I used to take about 10 years to write a really good book, maybe longer. So for me, that's the reason the author is important of books to me, is the time it takes to write one. And although we might talk about this in the second section, how it's becoming more easy to write books, I guess, and self-publish, which we can discuss in the second half. I feel like that still holds up today, because an author will have to invest quite a long period of time, especially in art and architecture, to discuss a certain subject, or even their own work, which could span 10 years, something like this.
And another way to look at that as well is they're putting a lot of time and effort into this writing, and it's something that's going to be criticised. And when you go to publish a book, say you're publishing with Taschen or Phaidon or something, they'll have a specific department that will look over these things, that are all qualified people. So you're not just putting out there, unless you're self-publishing, which will something we might touch on. But if you're putting it out and you put a lot of time and effort into this, if you're putting forward bad ideas that people are like, this is nonsense and it's uninformed, then it's not going to get published. So a lot of the time when you're picking up a book, you can look at a publisher sometimes and go like, okay, it's published by like a good publisher, or people that you trust. So you can go like, this is probably going to have some good information in it. So that might be a reason to do it.
It's being vetted. I think that's very important. When we talk about a book versus an online article, which, given it is due, it will have an editor that probably looks at the piece, by whoever. They have to respond to a higher editor within the thing before they publish it. But a book is constantly vetted. I know when we listen to people online talk about when they wrote their book, or a philosopher writes their book, especially someone like Jordan Peterson, you both listen to. He speaks about rewriting the same stuff over and over and over again, which is just not possible, I think, when you compare it to maybe an online article. So immediately we can talk about that.
Yeah, And another thing to notice is often when you go to read a book, especially a piece of critical writing, maybe not so much what you call a topical piece, like a piece of real critical writing that's looking at something maybe philosophically or in terms of socioeconomics. There's always an introduction. There may be introductions by other authors, by other doctors of the professions or whatever it may be.
Even their peers.
Their peers, for instance, yeah. Like if you go read a Douglas Murray book or say Sir Roger Scruton's books on beauty, they're always introduced by people in the fields, even opposing opinions in the fields, because they understand the importance of opinions. And it's not just somebody putting something out there and they're like, oh, go read it. Like this is important. It's like people have looked at this, they've read through it, they've proofread it, even if they don't agree with the ideas. You're getting educated takes on someone else's take, basically. Yeah. So if they think, maybe this has got something important, you can have a really nice introduction to someone, even if you don't know who they are, which is a good thing about a book.
I think it's like the Rotten Tomato meter or something like that. You get the audience review, which is the public, but then you also get the critical review. And if the critics receive it well, so if your critics are your peer group, I think that's a good steading for a good book, is to understand that someone's willing to put their name alongside this other person.
And I often say this, if you're looking for a book and maybe you don't know who someone is, for instance, say a Jordan Peterson or even a Douglas Murray or whoever it may be.
Not quite
Sam
art.
Go art, Robert Hughes, Joseph Albers, like whoever you want to talk about, Claire Bishop. You don't always go by public perception, because public perception can be very, very odd, misleading. If you want to go look for someone, and I'll go back to the example of a Peterson, someone who I think's very kind of
publicly perceived,
strangely publicly perceived, and that's not to say that I agree with everything someone like Jordan Peterson says, but go look at what other people in his field say, not like what an Instagram blogger says or like social media says about someone. Go look at other people in the fields. That's a good way to look at a book before you start. And this is something I really want to talk about before we move any further, which is just hitting upon this idea of books, and kind of going back to what we started on last time, ended on last time, in the system of education in books. One of the most important aspects of reading books, and something that I think is really important in uni, and one of the reasons I'm an advocate of wanting people to read more at university, is that if you go to a place of learning, you're learning someone's ideology. So like someone is teaching you something, and if you never cross-read, if you never read about that from different authors or opinions, you're going to believe one person's perspective, whether that's your lecturers or your peers that have told you something. You get stuck in a belief system, almost like a religion, where you're in this feedback loop of like, this is the way it is and I'm just going to believe this all the time. Whereas if you go to read other things, you can cross-reference it and you can come to your own understanding about things. And even if it is your understanding is someone else's that you agree with, because you've taken the time to think about it from a different perspective and go, actually, I don't agree with that anymore, but I agree with this perspective and this is why. So that's like, it's important. You get stuck in these feedback loops if you don't consume other information.
And I think that's another thing about a book, is like you say, a critical piece of writing often uses multiple sources. Right?
Yes.
To make a book, it's not. You do get books that are under 100 pages, but usually they're a bit thick. They're a bit thicker, have a bit of content to them, especially in the architecture department. A lot of them may be images. But when it comes to writing, like you say, if you're in an education system, get a book that cites a lot of sources. Citation and critical writing is like hand in hand. Nobody writes a book, or if they do, it's usually a load of nonsense off the top of their head. These are ideas that have been contrasted, compared multiple times. Usually they form the arguments and you're just knitting your own story to it when you go to critically write yourself. So by reading books, you get in touch with how to do that. They give you really good examples of how to lay out arguments as well. And it always shows an understanding of history in a book, I feel.
Right.
Compared to what we're going to go talk about in the second half, how the 21st century has really changed from back maybe 100 years ago, which we can't say is a better way of learning, but we can definitely talk about the pros of reading, especially when you talk about things like systematics, which I know you're kind of a big believer in.
Like the system. Well, that was what I was kind of talking about before. The system of you get stuck in systems. So like you might not know you're thinking a certain way. But you are unwillingly doing that because because of what you've been taught. So like, you've never read, and this is just an example, but say you've never read Karl Marx, right? Take a political aspect of it, right? And then you just start saying, but you're saying Marxist things without knowing it. That doesn't make you a Marxist. It just means that you're saying things that you don't really know about. And it applies to art. You can be talking about art theory, and you're thinking you're saying this new thing, or you're thinking you're just saying what someone else has told you, like in education. But you've never cross-referenced it. You don't know if you actually believe in these things because you've never put the time in to read the other books. So you're stuck in a system of thinking, when in reality there's so many systems, and you can create your own system by taking multiple ideas from other authors or writers or critics or theorists or whatever it may be.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to talk about remembering as well at this point, or is that something you want to cover in the second part when we kind of talk about remembering versus online when you read something? I don't know.
Yeah, so we could talk about that now if you want to talk about like the...
I think it's a good thing to say because, I think a pro to a book is that you do remember holding it, reading it, blah, 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 even if it's a Kindle, right?
Right.
I'm not going to argue the format of a physical book versus
a
Kindle now because,
I'm an analog person. I like that smell, man. There's something nice about holding a book.
I mean, there is definitely, and it's great to have a good collection of books on the shelf that you can look at and really... develop your own filing system for it, and that's a good way to create libraries in your head and thoughts and stuff like that. Your favorite books on the top shelf, whatever it is. Whereas if it's in a Kindle, it's kind of locked away and maybe you forget about it. I do like seeing books on a shelf. I think that's quite important to me as an architect.
I like seeing that.
Yeah, I read a book and then I'll obviously forget some of it, but like you say, reading a book for me is a lot easier than remembering some stuff I've seen online, and it's to do with...
well, this is something I was going to talk about later, but I think maybe it fits in better now, which is the idea of an audiobook or a physical copy, which we're kind of talking about, remembering ideas, remembering things. So when you read a word, right, what your brain is doing is it's reading every individual letter, and it's recognizing the word, and it's saying what the word is. You don't know you're doing it. It's not like you look at a word and you go, that's what that is. Your brain looks at all the letters in order and it goes, this is the word, and that's how it kind of works in your head. Whereas, if you meet a word, for instance, that you've never heard of, but you're reading normally, like they are, and then you come across a word, and it's what's that, and you don't know what it is, and you're like, and you have to look it up, and that helps you understand the context. Or you hear a name, and you're like, oh, who's that? And you go do it because you get this instant guttural reaction where you're like, oh, who is that? Like, I need to figure out who that is. When you're listening to an audiobook, you don't have that initial process of reading the word. It's all getting fed to you.
Yeah.
So you're consuming the information very quickly, and sometimes you'll get a word, say a word comes across that you don't know. You consume it and you might be like, I don't know what that is, but you kind of just go along with it, especially because it doesn't stop. You stop when you hit a word that you don't know. An audiobook doesn't know that. It just keeps going. So you'll kind of just consume it sometimes, or you'll doze off. Like, words are just coming in and you're like, okay, yeah, you're nodding along like, yeah, but you're not really consuming the information. You're not physically, like, going through things. It's just kind of getting fed to you, which is an interesting part of an audiobook. And there's obviously good things about an audiobook.
Absolutely.
But that's a strange thing that I think a lot of people don't realise they're doing. And that you can, if you open up a book and it'll say, like, this book will take 4 hours to read, and you press play.
You've got 4 hours to divide your time between other tasks.
Yeah, well. You're doing other things a lot of the time. I don't know that many people that will just sit down, put headphones in, and listen to a book. If you're using an audiobook, you're usually doing something else.
Yeah.
So you don't know how effective the information you're consuming, like you don't know how effectively you're consuming that information.
And it's two sides of the coin, exactly. It is good because you can get on with other things in life and you can say, oh, I've read that book.
Right.
But at the same time, I would mark the quality of an audiobook versus a real book still. To me, I agree with you and say that it's a bit of a strange thing. You can do it with podcasts too. Like right now, you could be listening to this and driving. You could be doing other things, and you're definitely taking some of the information. But
of course
I feel like you don't remember it as good. Definitely,
as well,
4 months down the line, hearing something compared to reading something, for me, resonates in a different way. So.
Right. Well, you're probably using a lot more of your. I'm no neuroscientist. I believe if you're reading, you're probably using more energy, using more power, like of your brain, using more of your brain, because of the amount of focus it takes to read. And that's interesting because saying about remembering, because I can listen to a podcast, and in the short term, I can recite things very easily, say a couple of days to a week, and then after that, it kind of disappears, and you can go back and watch a podcast again or an interview or whatever, and it's like almost like you're consuming information again. You're like, oh, I don't remember this, but haha, that's really funny. Or like, it's like almost having your first reaction again, which is really strange because if you read a book, you can remember things for a very long time, and you might not remember everything, but when you get to, you're like, yeah, I remember.
Before that, it's after that. Yeah.
I remember this bit. Yeah, that's maybe just personal things.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I guess that seems to be something that I've heard from quite a few people. And it's almost like when you try to recall a podcast from like a month ago, or an interview, or whatever it may be, a lecture online, it seems to be quite difficult if you've not taken notes, for instance.
But yeah, I guess what we're trying to say is that, you know, books are definitely a really important way to still consume. That's what we're arguing for. Consume good knowledge and canon, because tried and tested over time. They're usually more reliable, and we're going to get onto that in the second half.
Yeah.
Just as a human aspect, you remember them better, I think. The physical copy thing's a really nice thing that me and Dean both like. The idea that you can just pick up a book and flick to an image, or flick to a page and say, oh, that's the quote actually. You know, only thing I guess we could start just kind of criticising a book a wee bit, because books aren't dying because, not books are dying, reading large form books and stuff isn't dying because we're the only smart people out here reading books, or we're trying to say we're clever because we read books and be pretentious. It's dying because definitely there's a new form of intaking information brought on by the 21st century and technology.
There's an ease of consumption as well, and that you don't have to stop what you're doing to pick up a book and to really get into it. It takes more energy. It takes more to read a book. It doesn't make you, well, it might make you more intelligent, but it doesn't necessarily do that. And you think, well, I could be doing so much more with my time. A lot of people are really busy, and it's a big commitment to sit down with a big, thick old book, like you know, the art theory, like 1905 to 1970 or something. To like sit down with a book with writing this size and try and go through it. And there's parts of it you might not find interesting, but you'll never get to the good parts as you're looking at it and going, oh my god. Whereas in an interview you can go skip, and you can go, oh, that's interesting, rewind. And a book, it's hard to find, like, to navigate a book like that.
So generally a book, I guess, it's not keeping up with the times. And that's a really hard thing to say, because it sounds as if, you know, they're way to be extinct books, but they're definitely not.
Books aren't going anywhere, first of all. They'll never disappear. We know this for a lot of reasons. And this is actually something I was going to get into, which was the idea of the destruction of books. And this is actually important because this feeds back into the whole point of the podcast, which is art and architecture and the education through books. The idea and the saying goes, you know, well, not even the saying, we know if you destroy history, for instance, then you're doomed to repeat it. And this comes with art and architecture as well. If you don't know what's been made before you, or you remove the idea of even like looking into it, you will repeat it. You know, it's not like you're just going to come up with all these new ideas that have never been done before. You're going to do something at some point that somebody else has done. It's just going to happen.
And would you say that that's bad because what we're talking about is obviously the shift in format, and that's the bad things, that a book's a physical thing. You can't have about a book you know, across the world with you all the time. So you're saying that by making, unfortunately, the shift to media to online sources is actually not giving you a representation of what exists. It's an online archive that's seemingly endless, hard to find a corner of, hard to find a bookend. As I say, it's a nice thing to say you have all the books by one architect, David Chipperfield or something like that, and you understand his publication, his body of work is mostly covered by these books. But online it seems endless.
It seems endless. Yeah, it really does, and that you can. There's it's also, and this is something we're going to get into in the second half, of articles. There's so many, like you don't know where to start. You know, it's hard to look through it all. With like, you could look at like a single publication of a person's work, and it could be over 6 books. And this is a
time. Time is visualized.
It's all cited. It's all you can go like, okay, this is how much information I need to consume. Articles are endless. You know, I mean, information is endless. It's very odd, and also because
it's good and bad. Just to point that out before we go any further.
And that's also a thing. I think a lot of people are consuming their current trends in art and old ideas in art and architecture through media.
Online.
And then it's kind of hard to. It can be hard to media online to look at time periods. So this idea of consistently recreating old things, which is something that we do anyway. But if you don't know what's coming before you and you don't know where to look, then there's a problem. Like, because you don't. For instance, you don't know about Impressionism or something, and you've never read about Impressionism. You don't know who Monet is or Renoir or something.
Big names.
Renoir. I'm not French. So you go through these, and you're doomed to repeat it. But you might see something on social media. Oh, that's really interesting. You don't know when it's dated. A lot of the time, you don't know who painted it. You don't know, and you just maybe you like the style, so you start doing that without the context of knowing that like Impressionism is a thing that's happened, right? And it's okay to be an impressionist, but you need to understand what's come before you, right? And that's the role of a book. A lot of times, you can pick up a book that's just like Impressionism, and it'll give you like a real brief history of it or something, or a big chunky history.
Yeah. Books are usually in context. We maybe said this earlier in the podcast.
Yeah, maybe we're repeating ourselves a little bit with
something
too
much.
Yeah,
but,
things. Yeah.
We're trying to really make a strong case for a book right now, and we understand there is underlying issues. It's why a book slowly going out of fashion, and it really is. It's going out of fashion. They're not going to disappear, but we're trying to really create a strong argument for the pros of a book versus the online media that we're going to discuss in the second half.
And this is something that we can really get into. That was. It's funny because we said we're going to split this into two halves. So we're going to go, this is first half books. Or you can kind of I think we've repeated ourselves a little bit, to be honest. But you can kind of get into why books are good, why books might not be bad quite quickly, and get it over and done with. We've done 21 minutes today. We probably could have done that in 15. Mm-hmm. What we're really get on to: social media, publishing, the ease of publication, the problems with it, the pros, the cons, the things going on right now in just online in general. Mm-hmm. We might not have enough time to discuss all of it.
Absolutely.
Which is
the first episode is about education, and I don't think we barely grazed the top of it.
Yeah,
but it's just a conversation we're trying to evoke a little bit of something that we feel a little bit passionate about. And this subject, I think it has arms and legs that we're definitely not going to get to the end of.
No.
But we might cut this a little bit shorter than we usually do and try and get onto that now.
Yeah, I think we should really get on to.
Yeah. So we're gonna have a little 5-minute break, and we'll come back. And we'll just quickly
get
discuss
stuck into it. Okay, so we're back from a little break. So we're going to start off really getting into the online and social media and its role right now in the world of art and architecture. We're going to do pros and cons, but I think we're going to start really with the pros that are extremely evident and that I think everyone knows about, and that's the accessibility of it, the ease of access, how unbelievably accessible it is. First of all, it's all free, mostly anyway. I mean, I'm sure there's paid things, but it's all free. You can find new art online instantly. You have instant gratification. You don't have to pay any money to get to it. And in social media, it's free advertisement. So I'm going to talk about kind of my experience with it. So as an artist, as a painter, as a sculptor, I use Instagram, which I think is the main. I would say it's the main social media that creatives use. Although we're on Twitter and stuff, it's the one that I think most people use in terms of showing your paintings, for instance. So there's interesting ways to look at this. First of all, it's free, but you can just take a photo, upload it. You can hashtag things, you can share it. You don't have to be in a gallery to show your work to thousands of people. You can get other pages to share it. It's weird how easy it is in comparison to, say, getting into a book. So yeah, the accessibility of it's really interesting, and anyone can use it. It's all free. Mm-hmm. It's all there all the time. And it's a really, really good way to discover things. It's instant. So, I don't know.
Yeah, online accessibility, I think it's hard to argue against it.
Yeah.
Before I guess this is like historic view of it, but you had to be able to read to understand a book, right? You still have to be able to read, to go online and read an article or read whatever someone's posted, a journal, blog, whatever you're following. But the accessibility changes when you can instantly Google some sort of iteration for something you're looking for. A painting no longer has a title, say you want to look for this painting, you could You could Google two people looking at each other.
You could even if you can find a photo of it and you don't know the name of it, you can use like reverse image search and you instantly come up with it, which is
it's unbelievable to think how good technology is for an artist and an architect to be found. And for me, the accessibility thing very much relates. Very much relates to definitely the practice in my experience when working in Aberdeen. They were going through a transition from having a good client base, which they still have, but they definitely wanted to reach out and maybe get more jobs through online. And for architects, I think we all see it. I'm going to say we, but we all see it as an opportunity to get jobs, which is a strange thing because Instagram, like Dean's saying, is a social media platform, usually for interaction through images.
Right.
That's what it started as anyway. And for an architect to come along and start using it as, or think to use it as a tool for jobs is actually a different purpose than it was made for. So you start to get these different things you can do, and you can start to correlate things through hashtags and really just spread out the purpose of it. So I think online for accessibility is amazing, but it dilutes the idea of like why you're online almost.
Right. Which
is a weird thing to kind of talk about, but like I think I've maybe made it a little bit too vague, but
I would say it's great for the commercial side of anything. So like the commercial side of art, the commercial side of architecture, like just trying to get a quick job or trying to get like your work seen by someone, and it's instant feedback as well. That's a big part of it. So you can post an image online. You don't have to wait for, say you're publishing a book, you wouldn't have to wait for the critics to get back to your response that you might never see. Someone just comment on it and say like, I really love this is what I like about it. It's like instant response for an artist, which is like unbelievably good. Like like if you think about it, if you were to put art into a gallery, and you get to talk to like 3 people at the gallery, usually busy, say, you walk away, and then you never speak to anyone else there. If you have Instagram, say, you could have 50 comments, and you can read them all in your own time, and you've got it's unparalleled the kind of communication you can have with an audience through Instagram, through social media in general, through online. It's really impressive. It's a really good thing.
I think also the online gives a good level of professionalism to your work. Before the website was the important thing, but now I even see the idea that maybe a social media platform may replace the need for a website.
Websites, yeah.
You might see someone's Instagram handle before you go and Google their name, or it might be the first thing that comes up. Now, an Instagram is definitely a selected view of images with filters on them, which is something we could talk about as well. Yeah. It's a very personal platform still, which is a strange thing to still talk about the architecture side of things, which is...
You might have seen a weird pause there, but Dale fell off his chair. No, we went a little bit off track, so we thought we'd just kind of confine it in a bit, because we started just basically blathering. So yeah, one last thing we would talk about, pro of social media and online, is the freedom to say what you want, to put your work across as you want it to put across. There's no middleman. Like if you were to publish a book, it has to go through a filter. Whoever's publishing your book has people look over it, and they will have their own kind of agenda. They will take out what they don't like. They might, if you want to get it published, you have to kind of play it up to the man that you want it to get published by. If you're publishing in a newspaper or an article, it's often it's often filtered, right? You might be publishing, say, for a left-leaning or a right-leaning organisation, so they're going to want you to write about specific things. On social media, you can say whatever you want. You can put it across however you want. Your work is put forward by your words, right? Often, if you're applying for a gallery, you give them a piece about your work, and then they rewrite it and they change things in it to make you sound more appealing or commercially something they think they can sell.
Meet an agenda they're trying to push, perhaps. In architecture, you see a lot things that are trending, right? So green energy, the idea of renewables, blah blah blah. They may publish your building for that sake rather than something you want to say about the building, which this gives an opportunity to say. In a long format, like we're kind of doing now, if we post this on YouTube, there's no length to the amount of time we can speak about a subject.
Yeah.
Whereas an article in the AJ or the Rebate Journal, it's kind of a fixed format. So the freedom that you get is uncomparable to any other medium source.
Absolutely, yeah. The freedom is uncomparable. it's the most instant, easy way to put what you want to say across, without other people having to, and they can comment on it as well, which is an interesting aspect of it as well, is that you can get the instant feedback. If you think that you've said something great and someone says that they think it's not great, you get told that very quickly. You don't have to wait for criticism. So yeah. So with all these pros, with this magical idea of social media and online, that we've kind of built up, like it is this good thing, and it is a good thing, I think, in a lot of ways. There's also a lot of cons to it.
It's almost the exact same reverse at the same time. It's two sides of the coin. So basically, with full accessibility, it's very instant. It's a mixed media format. You choose what you want to say. There's a commercial aspect to it, which you can build yourself. What was I say? Yeah, so it's free. So it's being free means it's available for anyone.
Which means
if anyone can use it, usually means that anyone can say whatever they want uncited, which is the problem that we have between books and online format, whereas things are usually cited. As uncited comparisons or publications online by people who just have an interest in things dilutes content quite heavily about things that we value in our professions. So in architecture and art.
So I think the dilution of it all, things being diluted, it's my biggest pet peeve with the online format, with social media, is that anyone can say anything, anyone can post anything they want. We don't know how well informed someone is, and that's the difference between something like that and a book. Is that in a book, someone's spent a lot of time writing about this. They understand that the image in their book cannot put across the transient experience of seeing a great piece of art in person. Say a Rothko, right? I'll use Rothko as an example. If you're reading a book on Rothko and you're going through, I think most people would understand the idea that Rothko on a bit of paper, this size, it doesn't do anything. A lot of Rothko is to do with scale and presence and space, and interactions. The person writing that book understands that. That's what all the writing is about, is trying to put across the idea of the work, what the work is, and here's the image. The image is a really nice image, it's really high quality, it'll be much higher quality than most social medias, and it's physical as well. It's still physical, although it's not the painting itself. You can look at it, it's a physical thing, and online it's not, it's a flat image, always. The interesting thing there is that you can go online and you can play with images, and this happens with a Rothko, but this also happens with people's own work, and that you're giving unrealistic expectations to work. I can see the same Rothko painting posted by 11 different accounts, and then say all 11 of them, the painting looks slightly different. Why does it look different? Because you can just go saturation, brightness, color, change all your scales. You're giving the wrong impression of what the painting looks like. The reds are brighter, the blacks are blacker, they're deeper. Look how amazing this painting is. But that's not what it looks like in real life. And it's also not surrounded by what it needs to be surrounded by. And anyone can post it, anyone can give their opinion on this piece. You don't know who they are, they're not citing anyone a lot of the time. No one's filtering it. You can comment, but not, how often do you look at a piece on, say, Instagram or Twitter, and you click on it and you start scrolling through every single comment, and you start reading every single comment about what this person's thinking about what this person's posted? Not very much. You look at what the person said, you look at the image, and you go,
that's a little out of control. And with that, I would say,
no control to it.
It's a great thing about a book is that it's very measured and controlled, but also it doesn't overexpose you. It uses an image to articulate a point usually. That's what I see in a lot of publications. It might be a piece writing about a specific building. Use the building to illustrate the point, obviously, but choose very carefully the images it shows, usually. But online, I think that me and you both agree, 10 images of the same Rothko painting in a row, it changes what Rothko is. Or if you see 25 stories of a Francis Bacon painting that someone saw in a gallery, and someone else, a group of friends were with them, and they all took photos of the same thing over and over again in different filters and whatever's going on. It really dilutes the message, but it also has the reverse effect, which I think is negative, is that it creates a trend. And if someone's got a lot of followers, or they have a big social media platform, they could be well established and really know what they're talking about, which is a good thing. But at the same time, it could be someone who is known for something completely different, perhaps a fitness video or some sort of content creator who has an opinion about a piece which everyone's entitled to.
Yeah.
But if they have 1 million people they're speaking to, and they give out a diluted form of what they think it's about, I think it's detrimental to the effects of artists' work on the platform as well.
Yeah.
Where they might be doing work that is based on a baking or something like this. There's really quite a powerful piece and well painted that's completely undermined by someone's opinion of this piece.
Right, and this is a problem in general, and I think this is again going into my pet peeves of dilution. The diluted aspect of it also comes in with promotion pages, online galleries. Now this is something that I really want to talk about because as an artist, as someone who has an art Instagram page, because I think it's the thing to have, although I have thought about deleting it at some point, which could be an experiment for a later podcast. But so there's a lot of online galleries. Now, it's interesting because they can pick and choose what they want to show, right? They can just say, this is a good painting, I'm going to show this. But most of them have DM for inquiry in their bio, which means message me, I'll give you a price. You pay me this money and I'll post your work.
It's very odd. It's a very odd.
I don't know who this person is. I don't know how qualified they are. I don't know if they've got a degree in curation or whatever it may be. But I know they have 250,000 followers and I have 1,000 or 2,000. And if they can show my work to 250,000 followers, then that's going to be good for my career, maybe. But they're taking money from me to do it. So there's this weird commercial business aspect to social media as an artist that you don't have to. You can just hashtag and hope that people just love your work and you'll get it shared. But the reality is, if you want to get really out there, you need to be paying money to online pages to share your work, which is very odd in that I don't know many stories of artists in person ever going to a gallery and going, here's £2,000 or whatever it may be, please hang my painting up for me. Because most people are like, what are you talking about? Like, that's just, but that's the norm online. And it's a very interesting thing because you can also see things like trend chasing happening. So you just get a page that's just new, like, they'll say new and abstract, 'cause I think that page is actually quite good, but like, just like abstract paintings 2019 or whatever, and all they do is post abstract paintings. They don't care who's painting them, they don't know the context of the painting, they don't know the qualification of the painter. They just look at it and go, I like, look at that, or I know this is trendy and this is going to get me likes. You also don't know the purpose of the person doing it. Are they going to get to a point as well where they get to the point where they can start charging people money? Are they only thinking about this? Like, you're dealing with this strange barrier. It's not really personal. It's very impersonal at times.
I agree, and the same things exist for architecture. I follow some good pages, but then I follow some that have taken really advantage of the way you're allowed to sell your business the way you want it online, and they have pages named Top Architects, Next Top Architects, or the Best Architects 2020, or I know they sound like a meme or something like that, but they genuinely have like names that are quite influential, 20,000 followers, and you can inquire to a student or something like that to post their work, and this student, unknown to them, may say yes, and then it's exposed to 30,000 people. They get quite a good following from it, whatever you want to say, and that's kickstarted the career, which is great. But at the same time, I think it does the exact same thing. It's saying like they don't care about what the context of the work is. It's never explained any further than the image or the render they've put in. They don't know why they chose their work. Sometimes it's just, oh, your work looks good, we'll just throw that up. Last week we posted something that's very similar, we got good views on that, something like this. You get your insights when you run an Instagram page onto who's looking at your work, exposure and stuff like this. Paid promotions tell you exactly how many people have seen it, how many people have touched it and engaged with it.
Clicked on it, how many people followed you.
It's insane. Like we say, it's such a good platform, but it's almost like too advanced. We don't know exactly how to use it yet.
It's in a lot of ways, although the art world is very much a massive thriving industry, it's accelerating the commercial side of art, in that it's become extremely business oriented. Instagram, which I don't think a lot of artists think about. I think a lot of artists, when they're starting out or leaving university, you're not thinking business. You're thinking, oh, what's my practice? Like, what am I going to do? Like,
personal.
But you're not thinking like, oh, I need to hit a specific target of people. These are the people that are going to really like my work. Instagram allows you to see exactly who likes your work, like the type of people that are viewing your work, where they're viewing it, when to post it. It's very, very odd. And then this also creates the idea of, if you hit all these right things, say you've not studied art, you don't know what you're talking about, you see a trend of painting, you're like, I could do that, and you start just doing it. Then you pay the right people, you get the right trends, you become like this famous Instagram artist. At what point do you try and go into the world of art, right? Because the Instagram world of art, the social media world of art is very different from the real side. Like, you could have 100,000 followers as a painter and never have shown in a gallery before.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? So where's the crossover? When does it begin?
Yeah.
When you go to do that, how do you price your work? What's your clientele? Like, if you've never been in a gallery before, is it cheeky to ask for, you've got 100,000 followers, is it cheeky to ask for £20,000 for a painting? Or is that realistic? Mm-hmm. But you've never shown in a gallery before, so it's weird, man. It also creates a lot of problems.
Another problem I think it brings to architecture is it's accelerating, like you say, the commercial aspect. So it's very competitive to see who has the best self-presentation on their page. Blah blah blah. It creates trends, but I think it also is slowly developing in definitely younger years. There's kind of, they see the trend and they fall in love with the finished ideas of things, which is important to me, because the process of architecture is what I'm interested in. It's why I watch online lectures. I am particularly interested in the end product. The end product of the building is obviously beautiful. It's finished in the world. It must now interact with things around it. It's sculptural to a certain extent. Everything. It comes alive when it's finished, whatever you want to say. But a lot of people say that a building looks great when you lay the concrete, and it actually looks more beautiful before you clad it and put all the things inside it. But for me, the process is completely missed online. Yeah. And the books obviously talk about it. That's the main beef, and like the meat of a book is like talking about all these things.
Yeah, the process.
Instagram removes the process, and it's making people fall in love with the finished product. And I know that that's quite a good thing in a way, because you look at an aspiration of what you want to achieve. Maybe you don't quite get why it looks like that or whatever. You fall in love with the image. Right. And I know a lot of people that would argue that that's a good thing. They're like, oh, what's wrong with that?
Right.
But the problem for me is that, for us it was, I found a page that maybe shows you lots of models. And models in architecture are important. But you get different types of models, which isn't really discussed. And everyone always seems to want to make the finished model, the most beautiful model.
Right.
But for me, what I've been taught is that a working model teaches you more about architecture, which is the thing you should be trying to do, is learn more about architecture.
Yeah.
Not go for this gratification thing where I will post a beautiful model at the end and people are going to love it and it's going to be great. I'm going to be famous.
Yeah.
The world doesn't need any more star architects. Put it that way. That's my opinion on this. And people should start thinking about the things they see and the processes behind them.
Right. And this is and I agree with that with art as well. The funny thing is that the art world has so many stars that you don't, or what you would perceive as stars, that you couldn't name them all. I guarantee you couldn't name them all. You could name 100. There's thousands. There's thousands of big artists, right? You've probably never even heard of. That's how big the art world is. That's why there is that separation between that and social media, and that people think that if they get big on social media, they're going to be big artists. It's a totally different world. You could have 20,000. I've seen it. I've seen artists that sell paintings for hundreds of thousands of pounds have 8,000 followers on Instagram. Take Callum Innes for instance. I'm a Callum Innes Scottish painter. He doesn't have that many followers on Instagram. I'm telling you right now, Callum Innes has more success on.
I thought he just dissed Callum Innes.
He has more success in the actual art world than 90% of your famous Instagram artists. And probably a lot more respect from the faculties in the educated world. What's more important? I mean, that's up to you to decide. I mean, really, I'm not saying that makes him a better person or better an artist, but there is a reality to the game of Instagram and reality, like it's or art and online and reality.
And this is the conversation, I guess, is like it's the maybe we're not keeping up with the times, or maybe we're misunderstanding it, but by speaking about it, it's not making sense to us why it's going that way.
Yes,
in a professional sense, because it's actually a lot of negative that comes along with it. I think, well, the things we're kind of talking about for the instant access and stuff like that, that's all great, but the negatives that come with it are so negative that I think we should actually take a step back from it. And I guess our final point we should try and conclude on, because we're approaching a kind of an ending point, I think, of the conversation, is we're going to just try and conclude by talking about like book versus online, and the idea of imagination and reality, and the idea of readability, I guess, to finish on in the end is the strongest point.
And I think a way to look. One thing I want to say on this, but also linking back to all of it, is there's a level. There is the actual thing, the actual building, the actual painting, the actual sculpture, whatever it may be. Then there's the book, which has the writing and the photo of it, or whatever it may be. There's the article of it. There's the online image. There's the Instagram image of it. None of those things, except for the actual thing itself, will give you a proper impression of the work, right? You need to see, there's different levels of detachment. The actual images will always be the actual thing. That's the strongest thing. So it's up to you how far away removed from that you want to get in terms of taking in these pieces of art, these pieces of architecture.
And just to quickly note on that, you can continue. Just some people actually work in the way that they just use images of things they find online, they screenshot and keep it for later, and that's maybe how they work. But for us, I guess the conversation is just like we're trying to get as close as possible to the real thing. We can't see it. And for us, the format of that publication is both books.
The closest thing that I've ever been able to find to the realist thing is a book.
And the reason for that, for me, is when I read a book, perhaps on theory, maybe think what I read recently, Adam Caruso, the Feeling of Things. There's very little. I don't think there is an image in that book. It's less than 150 pages, no images, and it speaks about buildings in a way that my imagination can imagine it without being let down by an image of it. But at the same time, I need to see the real thing.
You need to see the real thing.
I need to see it. It keeps it alive for me that I can't see it yet.
Yes.
For me, that is very important. Just an idea that, I've not seen it. It'd be good if I could see it to understand it more, or a part of it. But I can't imagine the full thing. But the words take me to a point where I'm happy with the imagination of it.
And you have that high resolution. In saying that way, there is an image, but in a book, you might have a really high resolution image of this, multiple images of it. And that's also, links into the further detachment of something like an Instagram. Is it's downscaling things. You're changing colours. You're changing colours of things. You can saturate things. You can lower brightness, up brightness. You don't get the aspect of the size of it a lot of the time because it's on your phone or it's on a computer screen. It's you're diluting and diluting and diluting things. So
and the amount of time you spend with it as well. I guess I don't want to repeat ourselves. I've probably mentioned this before, but I mean recently Dean showed me a little bit of Robert Hughes' documentary, The Shock in the New, which was quite interesting to me. I never really watched it before, but I guess a nice point to end on is the fact it's like a piece of art or a piece of architecture is only as good as the amount of time you're willing to look at it.
It's valuable as the amount of time you spend with it.
Yeah, exactly. And a book is the step down from spending the actual moment in it. The book's the step down because you have to sit with it and read it because you spend more time reading.
Takes effort.
And then the third step of it is this online presence that's now happening, which is the lowest time you need to, the least amount of time.
But it's fast and it's accessible, so there's the pro of that, and you can just take it in whenever you want, and it's fast and anyone can do it, right? You don't have to go to a Guggenheim to see what you want to see. You can just do it quickly online. But
so it's good.
There's the reality of you're doing it. It's quick. You're not really spending time. First of all, you're not spending time with the work. The actual work you're not spending time with. You're spending time with an idea of the work, and that's the same with a book. You're spending time with the idea of the book, but it's cited, it's cross-referenced. People are really put time.
It's a higher level.
Yeah,
it's a higher level.
The online thing is it's fast, and if you're not spending time with it, you're consuming it quickly. Then you're not really spending time with the work.
Yeah,
and that's kind of the whole point. The whole argument is that a book is about as close you'll get to actually spending time with the real thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. And another quote I actually heard last year from one of our professors back when I was in university. He quoted Glenn Murcutt and saying, a piece of architecture is only as good as far as you're going to see it. If it's not as good as you willing to cross the road to look at it, it's not really worth your time to look at it. On Instagram, these things online, sometimes you don't have the choice. Sometimes it just appears before you, which I think is the worst part of online access to anything, is that you don't control everything at any point.
It's not your choice.
It's not your choice, and people need to remember that when they're scrolling. If your phones, I sound paranoid. Your phones will listen to your thing, maybe suggestions. They'll give you other stuff, more stuff to consume, and they'll try and force you, because there's a commercial aspect to it. And a book, it really gives you the opportunity to read what you want.
Yes.
Read what you want and collect your own library of thoughts. That's what I like.
Yeah, and I agree with that in totality. So I think that's a good note to end on. I think that this has been quite an interesting episode because it's been quite rambly. But I think we've got some good points across, and I think this might help people kind of understand where we're coming from. Maybe get some people to pick up some books, and maybe just think about the next time they're on social media and they see an image of a work, to maybe go look it up online first, and then go, if you really like that, go like, oh, maybe I should buy a book and look at this. Maybe I should go to look up where is this painting? Is it close by? Can I go see it? Like, I think that's the whole point of this. And as I say, we're still ironing the kinks. It's only episode 2.
Absolutely, and I mean
these
the format's not set yet as well. I mean,
these episodes will get more conversational and more free flowing, I think,
hopefully.
in time. I think so. I think we're hitting quite large topics right now, and we might want to focus it on smaller things in time. But this also
and mix it up. I mean, we might post out in the future once we see how this gets on, and we would love to expand what we talk about as well, and really, because maybe even to help out our community that we value so much.
Right,
we'd love to do maybe an interview for.
We want to start doing some interviews at some point, I think, and I've got some people that I think I want to do at some point. But also not just the interviews. Like, this is an art and architecture-ish podcast, but we're really talking about the arts in whole. We might want to discuss something that's not our practices, that's not painting or architecture. We might want to discuss film at some point. Or,
absolutely.
It's
still very open, and we're just trying to learn as we go, and hopefully we get some feedback.
And hopefully we stop being so nervous and start being really funny. That would be so we're going to end it now.
Cheers.
Cheers.